the words of Jason Stanley, authoritarian regimes want to erase the past in order to control the future. To accomplish that, they have to beat universities into submission. Because at their best, colleges and universities are centers of independent thought and places where knowledge is produced with the goal of making society better. That mission requires that we honestly address the ways in which we've gone wrong as a society. But critical thinking is anathema to authoritarians who want people to believe that the regime itself is the only source of truth and that the regime can do no wrong. The MAGA regime wants us to believe that their blackmail of universities is intended to prevent anti-Semitism, but that is a transparent lie. Remember, this is the same president who said when Nazis marched across the campus of the University of Virginia, beating people and chanting, "Jews will not replace us," he said there are fine people on both sides. This is the same president who staffed his administration with close advisors who openly subscribe to the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. That conspiracy theory says that Jews or globalists or liberals want to open the country's borders to people of color in order to bring the U.S. down to the status of what Trump describes as a shithole country. That conspiracy theory, excuse me, got carried away with my own rhetoric. That is why MAGA is attacking international students and immigrants. The MAGA attack on universities is not about protecting anybody. It's about suppressing challenges to the regime's racist narrative that their own unlimited power is the only thing that can keep America from becoming a shithole country. They want to force us to make comprehensive changes to how our universities operate. They want to control what we teach, how we teach, who we teach, the kinds of research that we do. In short, they want to enforce a MAGA political culture on the nation's campuses. GOP-dominated state legislatures are already doing this in Florida, Texas, Indiana, Ohio, and other places. If they succeed in doing this nationally, there will be no more questioning where America has gone wrong, how we might better live up to our democratic promise. That's why it's crucial that colleges and universities don't submit to the MAGA power grab. We must be more like Harvard, who are resisting, and less like Columbia, who surrendered. Of course, Syracuse isn't as rich as Harvard, so we can't go it alone. That means we must band together with other colleges and universities, pool our resources, and collectively defend our institutions when they come under attack. The future of our democracy depends on what we do now. Whether we can preserve spaces of critical, independent inquiry and deliberation. That's what's on the line. Thank you for coming.
When universities are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When academic freedom is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When international students are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When scientific research is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
All right, let me introduce my good friend and Associate Professor of Sociology, Gretchen Purser.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I have to say, as a professor, nothing has been more depressing to me this year than to hear students and other faculty members talk about just feeling scared to speak out, feeling scared to take action. And so I'm really excited to see many of my students here, and thank you to all my colleagues for being here as well. So I'm going to talk today about the attack on workers and unions. We are facing an administrative attack on workers and unions, which is, of course, an attack on democracy, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. So just in the last 6 weeks, the Trump administration has waged a war on workers, and it's done so under the evil guise of national security concerns. So just as we see the attack on universities being done under the guise of fighting anti-Semitism, we're seeing this really crazy idea that national security requires that we attack workers and attack their unions. So first and foremost, of course, is the plight of immigrant workers who are the backbone of our country, who are doing the essential work, who are now living in the shadows, who are being terrorized by ICE. But I also want to talk about the administration's ending of collective bargaining for over 50,000 airport screeners. I want to talk about the Trump administration's tossing out of the union contracts and prohibition on collective bargaining for over 1 million federal employees. I want to talk about the firing of tens of thousands of federal workers in a Doge-led slash and burn campaign. So this is an administration that's hell-bent on destroying unions, on eradicating collective bargaining, on dismantling any and all labor standards. They're starting with the public sector because it has a union density rate that's about 5 times greater than that in the private sector. And it now represents about half of all organized labor. But I want you to make no mistake, because if Trump and the oligarchs get their way, there will be no unions. There will be no collective bargaining. There will be no workplace protections. Just sheer and total atomization and subordination. The administration's war on unions and collective bargaining will, of course, undoubtedly empower the private sector employers to flagrantly violate labor law, to undermine the rights of workers everywhere. So we all know that here on our campus, we've seen a recent wave of unionization. So let's give it up to all of you who have been working to foster the solidarity that Crystal just talked about. The Syracuse Graduate Employees Union, for example, even successfully negotiated a new contract. But we also have to recognize that we're dealing with an administration here on campus that is stalling in its negotiations with the staff, the very workers who make this institution run day in and day out. And we're also dealing with an administration that blames these unions and the collectively bargained contract for the graduate students for all kinds of new financial austerity measures. So look, all together, we can't be passive and we can't be silent. So I sit in this prestigious Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, which houses the #1 program in public administration. We just reheard that again this past week. But I am not hearing people talk about this unhinged attack on public sector workers, nor am I hearing people talk about the centrality of unions as primary vehicles of civic engagement and democratic practice. But if there's one thing that is wildly clear, it is that right now we are living in a time when an injury to one is an injury to all. This also means that unions need to step up their game. They really need to step up the game. And they need to be on the front lines of vigorously and vocally defending the right to free speech, the right to organize, and the right to protest. So for example, when we saw the vicious attacks on protesters last year, and the silencing of students and faculty who are condemning the genocide in Gaza, that actually narrows the grounds of protest for everyone, including the unions. They have to be at the forefront of speaking up to defend our rights to speech and to collective assembly. So again, we don't have the luxury of inaction, and we must take action. Thank you so much.
On our campus last year. Y'all know Queen. I know you got your hands full, some of you, but can you do this? And we're gonna sing. We will not be silent. Try it. We will not be silent. We will not be silent. We are strong together. We are strong together. Don't leave me now. Hands off of our students. Hands off of are strong together.
We are strong together.
Woo! Very nice.
I'm here to talk about the Constitution, and specifically Trump's assault on the Constitution. But when I talk about the Constitution, I'm thinking about it not just in terms of the document that sits in the National Archives, but also as a document that shapes the way that our entire democratic government is organized and operates here in the country. That Constitution has some vulnerabilities built into it. And those vulnerabilities, most notably for the present moment, include the fact that it's premised on the notion that the institutional actors within it are acting in good faith to preserve the structures of our government and our Constitution, not to weaken those structures. So I'm going to talk about very quickly 3 ways in which the Trump administration is exploiting those vulnerabilities at the present moment. First of all, the Trump administration is consolidating power in the office of the president and in the person of Donald Trump. Our constitutional system is a system of shared power, and Trump is fundamentally trying to rewrite that essential premise of our constitutional and governing structure. Second, the administration is disabling basic functions of the government. So Congress has written laws and created agencies so that the government can actually do things. And part of the things that the government can do that no one else can do is rein in huge corporations and the billionaire class. Literally, no one else can do that. So the way that the Trump administration is operating now is designed to rein that in and disable the government from having that effect. Then finally, the Trump administration has been repeatedly flouting the rule of law. Our Constitution establishes limits on executive power and basic rules that we all have to follow to ensure that government can function and that our rights are protected. But this administration has been engaging in flagrantly illegal and unconstitutional actions from day one. And now it's not even complying with court orders, as many of us know from a lot of the cases going on. So again, our Constitution has a lot of weak points when we're in this kind of a situation, because again, it assumes that the president and Congress want to maintain our basic governing structure and will not take steps to actively erode it. But these things are no longer true in the United States today. What is true, however, is that most of us, the people here and the people not here today, do want to maintain that basic governing structure. Most of us are committed to democracy and the rule of law. And what's also true is that movement away from democracy and toward authoritarianism is not inevitable once it begins. So there's no single line that once we cross it, we can't go back, right? So it's also true that the vulnerabilities that I've just talked about means that the Constitution cannot save itself from this political moment, right? That's why it is so important that we all keep doing things like this, that we keep coming together and speaking up and speaking out about what is going on. Because democracies can be and often are strengthened after moments of attack, which is what we're experiencing right now. So we can do that here too. So summer break this time means summer democracy work, and we all spread out into our different places and build solidarity and create action in all of these places to make sure that this moment is a temporary moment in American democracy and that we can move in the right direction together.
We got an amazing turnout here, so I just got a quick note about the AV situation. So maybe a couple of quick notes. First off, next time we're going to ask the administration to give us more than 1 amp. Second off, if you're in the back and having trouble hearing, by all means, squeeze up closer. And third of all, to my speakers, most of us up here talking are professors, so we're all used to standing in front of people and talking, but we are not all used to speaking into a mic like this. Look how close I am to it. You got to get your face really close to it. Okay. So with that note, we're going to hear next from Srivi Ramasubramanian, and then we're going to hear from Deirdre Joyce.
Good evening, Syracuse. I'm here to talk as the great-granddaughter of a journalist who walked with Salt March. We know the power of the people. I come from the largest democracy, India, to the oldest democracy, the US. I speak on behalf of all brown, black, immigrant, queer people here to say that we need to be united. There is strength in numbers. I have a book called Power of Numbers. And hands off. When I say words, you have to say hands off. Okay? Here we go. Our media. Hands off. Our media. Hands off. Our data. Hands off. Science. Hands off. Humanities. Hands off. PBS. Hands off. NPR. Hands off. Our bodies. Hands off. Our democracy. Hands off. Our schools. Hands off. Our campuses. Hands off. Hands off everything that you do not know anything about. Free speech is the blood of democracy. We have the right to unite, we have the right to protest, we have the right to speak together for what is the truth. The job of media is to say the truth. We should not interfere in that process. As a media and professor of journalism, media studies, communication, we have to use our voice. Silence is complicity. Do not be afraid. Use your voice to speak the truth. Come together in solidarity to support one another. That is all you have to do. Just speak the truth, and it's that simple. Show up, stand up, be together. Today is a beautiful day of solidarity. Thank you for showing up here. I now invite my colleague Andrew to say a few words and share a personal story.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew. I'm a member of the academic community here at Syracuse. It gives me no sense of pride to say that when first asked to tell this story I'm about to tell, I was struck with fear. I was actually a student here who gave me the courage to stand and provide this testimony, not on myself, but of my colleague. When I'm not here teaching or on campus, I work remotely from a small academic department based in Georgetown University. A department up until about 3 weeks ago was relatively obscure. The Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, or ACMCU. Many of you may have heard about this in the news. 3 years ago, a PhD graduate reached out to our department because of the work we did. He was from India. He graduated from the Nelson Mandela Center of Peace and Conflict Resolution. He was a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and as a result, was designated a scholar at risk. We took him in to provide him a safe place in which he could conduct his postdoctoral research. This person's name is Dr. Badr Khan Suri, and despite his protected status, on March 17th at 8:30 p.m., he was met by a team of masked ICE agents outside a suburban home in Arlington, Virginia, and transferred to an ICE detention facility in Plainview, Texas. Dr. Suri is the father of 3 children, all under the age of 10. His wife, a Palestinian-American dual citizen, is my coworker. Despite not being charged with a crime or not being himself involved in any protest, the Trump administration's reasoning for his detention and others is that he, quote, presents a clear and direct threat to U.S. foreign policy. If time allows, I would like to read a brief excerpt from our director, Dr. Nader Hashemi's recent article in New Lines magazine recounting his interaction with Dr. Suri in prison. The first 10 days in Texas were a nightmare. He was forced to sleep on the floor of the television room with the TVs blaring nonstop and the lights on 24/7. He got little sleep during this time. Now he is in a dormitory where he's been assigned a high-risk detainee. A dark red prison outfit is the required attire. He is entitled to mere 2 hours of fresh air per week. There are gangs in the prison, and the diet he is forced to eat exacerbates his underlying health conditions. He has pleaded for medical attention, and they have gone unanswered. This cannot stand in our country. We have the right to say no. Hands off our scholars. Hands off our students. Thank you for your time.
All right, I'm here to speak for libraries. So I'm here to ask this Syracuse University community to show up for libraries. You've done it. Americans have loved and relied on public libraries, school libraries, academic libraries for generations, and traditionally there has been a long bipartisan consensus that libraries are net positive investments in our communities, no matter what type they are. Why? Because libraries are more than places with just books. They're spots where we learn and we find opportunities and we feel welcome. That's true here at Syracuse University and in our library and across communities all across central New York. Let's hear it for libraries. Libraries, we're all about knowledge. These K-12 libraries that get kids excited about reading and learning. Academic libraries have students and researchers diving deep into their studies. Public libraries have something for everyone, sparking curiosity and lifelong learning. All right, yeah, libraries are also places where opportunities are everywhere. They give us access to technology, educational programs, and resources that might be hard to find otherwise. And whether you need to find a database for your class or need help finding a job, libraries have got your back every time. Best part, libraries welcome everyone. No matter who you are or where you come from, libraries open their doors to all of us. They celebrate diversity and they make sure everyone feels valued and supported. Libraries are where we all come together, share experiences, and build connections. But folks, here's the scary part. Libraries are under serious threat. All right, federal funding cuts are putting these amazing places at risk. Our tax dollars, your tax dollars, are being diverted for I don't know what. And it's messing with the support that libraries provide. This isn't just about the money, it's about fairness and access to information. And there's more, book bans. Book bans? So they're bad for democracy and they're bad for the country that we want to be. Banning books limits our understanding and messes with free speech and intellectual freedom. In a country that values liberty and justice for all, we have to show up and fight against censorship. So I'm asking all of you to keep showing up in places like this and in the offices of your elected representatives at all levels. We can and must remind them that libraries are critical to a free and just society. And when they unilaterally threaten or remove our taxpayer investment in libraries, that's when we say, hands off. All right? Let's do it. Let's do this. So when they say, no more funding for early literacy development and grade level reading programs, we say what?
Hands off!
When they say no more funding for summer reading programs for kids, we say what?
Hands off!
When they say no more funding for employment assistance for job seekers, we say what?
Hands off!
When they say no more Braille and talking books for people with visual requirements, we say what?
Hands off!
When they say no more homework and research resources for student and faculty, what do we say?
Hands off!
When they say no more veterans telehealth spaces equipped with technology and staff support, what do we say?
Hands off!
When they say no more STEM programs, simulation equipment, and training for workforce development, what do we say?
Hands off!
When they say no more small business support for budding entrepreneurs, what do we say?
Hands off!
Libraries are essential. Thank you.
Do we have some great energy here? Let's hear it. I am pretty thrilled with this crowd. So, I should be, thanks, great. That was sweet. One of the things that's happening right now that's very distressing is the way in which Trump is deploying narratives of protecting Jewish students and stemming anti-Semitism as a way to silence speech, to silence the rights of Palestinians and the rights to protest and the rights to object to what's happening in Gaza. Shame is right. I'm Jewish myself, a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. I had a visit from the FBI who came to my door shortly after October 7th, and they said the reason why I was there was because I had co-organized a rally for Palestinian justice. And I was smart enough not to say, which I wanted to say, oh, which one? This is not okay. What they are doing, the way they are weaponizing and the term anti-Semitism does not make Jews safer. It certainly doesn't make Palestinians safer, and it doesn't make any of us safer. So we have to be willing to call out that bullshit narrative. All right. So next up we're going to have Ivy Kleinbard, who's going to talk to us about the weaponization of anti-Semitism. Hello, Syracuse!
I'm Ivy Kleinbart. I'm a member of the Faculty of Writing Studies. I am the non-tenure track representative for the AAUP, and I'm here today as a person of Jewish descent to talk about this administration's weaponization of anti-Semitism. Before I get started, though, I have a little announcement. I want everybody to know that the AAUP is also organizing an information session for tomorrow at 2 p.m. on Zoom that is a Know Your Rights session that will help everybody to know their rights in the event that you or somebody you know should be confronted with ICE, the government's Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. So we have a flyer, we have flyers that are floating around, and we have a barcode on the flyer where you can just, or QR code where you can scan and register for the event. They're all over the place, and I have some up here if you want one. We also have an information sheet on ICE that will give you just a little bit of information on what to do if you should happen to come in contact with an ICE agent. And I also want to just say my colleague, R.C. Concepcion from the Newhouse School, who's doing work in information in the iSchool, also is developing an app that is a Spanish English language app for immigrants to put on their phones to help them in many ways to navigate ICE confrontations. So if you're interested in getting that, he has also a QR code that you can scan, so he's down there right in the front. We knew that trouble was coming even before Trump took office because legislation was already in the works to codify into law a definition of anti-Semitism that would expand its commonly understood meaning of anti-Jewish bigotry to encompass various forms of political expression and criticism of the state of Israel. Then, in early March of just this year, the government began its charge on two major fronts. First, it canceled $400 million in federal grants to Columbia University, saying that the university had, quote, failed to protect Jewish students from anti-Semitism. Soon after, we saw cuts of over $2 billion in federal grants to Harvard for the same reason. Neither university was presented with a case against them or given an opportunity to correct for any legitimate shortcomings. So that's one clear indication that these funding cuts have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. They are the government's attempt to weaken and control our universities, silence political dissent, and create a culture of intimidation and preemptive compliance among students and faculty. Okay, so the second thing that happened was also in March, the Trump administration started arresting international students with valid green cards and visas on charges of anti-Semitism, mostly for participating in campus protests against the state of Israel, and even alleging that they were supporters of terrorism, although in some cases, what the students had maybe done was even much, much less than that. At this point, over 1,100 students in this country have had their visas revoked or their legal status terminated, allegedly because they represent a threat to U.S. foreign policy. Really? So to be clear, I am not here today to deny or downplay the seriousness of anti-Semitism. But do you think that this president, who has tweeted racial slurs and disparaged women and people of color and people with LGBTQ identities and people with disabilities, is actually concerned about fighting bigotry on our college campuses? No! Don't be fooled. I want to speak today because as a person of Jewish descent, I am personally offended and outraged by this administration's totally disingenuous crusade in purporting to protect American Jews when what they are clearly doing is using us to rationalize attacks on our universities, our international students, and anyone who dares to speak out against the Israeli government's excessive use of force in Gaza. And that's why I'm here today to say, hands off our students, hands off our universities, and hands off our democracy. When I was much younger, I spent time in Israel. I was there for 2 6-month periods of time. I was an exchange student as a high school student in Haifa for 6 months. And then I also lived on a kibbutz after college. And so I have deep connections and very fond feelings toward Israel. I have been personally really distressed over what's going on in Gaza since the October 7th attacks. And I want to say that I know that many of my Jewish colleagues and students, in addition to feeling their own grief and tragedy over the Hamas attacks on Israel, also share that outrage. And so I think it's important to recognize that. And I also want to say I'm offended by our own president's remarks calling Gaza a stretch of prime real estate. Which just shows complete lack of disregard for the humanity and dignity of the Palestinian people. And so I have a message for this president. We all know he has very small hands, but they are also greedy hands. And so I am here to say, Mr. President, hands off Gaza. And I'm also going to say to his buddy Bibi Netanyahu, hands off Gaza, and hands off the West Bank, and hands off Lebanon. I know that not everybody agrees with my views, but I want to say that whatever your political views, it's vital that we protect each other's rights to speak our truths on this conflict. And that includes the right to criticize Israel. Criticism of the state of Israel is not anti-Semitism. It is because I care about Israel that I feel obligated to criticize Israel, because this is not the Israel that I want to see in the world. And it's the same right that I think gives us our freedoms of speech in this country and our rights to criticize this government. So this is what freedom of speech really means. And this is, by the way, this is what the AAUP stands for and why we organized this rally in the first place. We defend the rights of faculty and students to speak their truths, no matter how controversial. We believe, we believe that controversy is an essential part of a thriving university community, and that the answer to controversial speech is more rather than less discourse. And I just want to say, I know that the Palestinian situation, the conflict in Palestine, has sown deep divisions on this campus and caused a lot of people a lot of pain. And the AAUP cannot just fix that pain magically, but we can and must do our part to stand up in defense of academic freedom and freedom of speech for all on this campus. But I also want to say that controversial speech also requires courage and risk-taking on the part of individuals, and it is not easy. So talking to those who see the world differently from you is so important. And I want to just say also, as a professor in the writing studies department, you know, we know that rhetoric can be really slippery and complicated. We hear the same words in different ways with different histories and meanings attached. And so, you know, we don't want to assume that we understand what someone else is saying when we hear the words that they use and we maybe feel offended or feel upset. It's so important that we spend the time to talk to one another and really get to know what each other is thinking. And that takes a lot of patience. So I just, in closing, I want to say I think solidarity is so important. And the work of talking across lines of difference one-on-one is so important. And it's so important to do that and also to try to listen to each other with big hearts. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today.
Give it up for Ivy.
What we are experiencing in this country right now, with the censorship of marginalized voices and the rights of higher education institutions, goes beyond the Trump administration. Over the last few years, Syracuse University has silenced the voices of graduate students and undermined the governing bodies of this campus that stand up for undergraduate and graduate student rights. While we must address the deconstruction of our country's democratic values, We cannot be blind to the systemic breakdown of our inherent rights to knowledge and education. Syracuse University is exposed to this and yet does nothing to prepare for the inevitable fight ahead. As we advocate for our rights nationally, the fight internally for undergraduate and graduate student rights must be respected on this campus and must not be brushed aside. I implore our university officials, our members of the community, and those with platforms and privilege to explore how we can further protect our vulnerabilities and deflect attacks on democracy that have jeopardized our resources. Advocating for undergraduate and graduate student rights must begin internally alongside the strengthening of our shields against external legislation. On behalf of the GSO, a student government formed in the civil rights era, I urge that we as a collective advocate for higher education to be preserved as a forum for deliberative democracy that welcomes diverse perspectives and opinions. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Yeah! So I'm not really a political rally kind of guy. It's not my vibe. But back in November, right after the election, an international student, I'm not going to say what country the student is from, said to... Closer to the mic? Okay. In November, right after the election, an international student, I won't say what country the student is from, asked me if they were going to be deported. And I said, no, you're here on a valid student visa. And so it really, really upsets me to find out that our government is actively canceling student visas, and it's claiming that it has the right to do so without actually engaging in due process. I have been teaching at SU for over 2 years. My favorite part of this job is working with international students and having international scholars as my colleagues. I know that my American students learn better when there are international students with them in the classroom. I know that the research that I get to do as a faculty member is enhanced by the presence of international faculty members and international scholars. And I think it is enormously disingenuous for our federal government to be cracking down on international students who have come to our country to learn, to come to the best educational institutions in the world under false pretenses of fighting anti-Semitism or of protecting national security. I don't believe the government, and neither should you. I am very lucky to have been born in the United States. Many members of my family were not born in the United States. I really don't think the luck of where you are or are not born, the luck of what language you happen to be taught as a child, should determine your legal status. That's not my ethics. And if you come here, I really genuinely do not care where you're from. I do not care whether English is your first language or your fifth. If you are here to study, if you are here to learn, I want you to be here and I want you to be safe. I know that Trump has only been back in power for like 90 days. It feels like a decade. I don't remember in which month of 2025 the crackdown on students with visas, some students with green cards, permanent residency began. But I saw comments on social media, well, why should I care about this student? I don't agree with what they were saying anyway. That's not how free speech works. If they can crack down on the people you disagree with today, they can crack down on you tomorrow. If they go after students with student visas today, They can go after students with green cards tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, they'll go after students who are naturalized citizens, and the day after that, they'll go after students who were born here and have birthright citizenship. It is not a coincidence that the same administration that is cracking down on international students and their right to free speech, which is protected, it's not a coincidence that the same administration is trying to end birthright citizenship. These are interconnected issues. And finally, I know my colleagues already said this, I just want to repeat this. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been following, I grew up reading about U.S. politics. I've been following it for too long. I devote too much of my energy to reading the news. I have never seen anything as cynical as the weaponization of anti-Semitism as a cover story for attacking international students. What has historically made Jews safe in the United States is the fact that the rule of law has been respected. Equal protection has been respected. The First Amendment right to freedom of religion and freedom of expression has been protected. And if those rights are violated for anyone, everyone is at risk. And that's why I'm here as an American-born citizen speaking out on behalf of international students.
I forgot the chant. What do we chant when we say that we want hands off the arts and humanities? When humanities are under attack, what do we do? When the arts are under attack, what do we do? All right, thank you very much.
All right, give it up for Bryce. So I'm going to close this afternoon, but I got a couple people who want to join me here at the mic, and people are people are just coming up to us and being like, I got something people can actually do, something concrete people can help out right now. I got a QR code. Can I talk to people for a minute? So I'm not going to say no to that. So Jasmine first.
Hi everybody. Sorry, can you hear me? Good? Hi. So my organization La Lucha and a bunch of other multicultural organizations are organizing a petition to send to the Chancellor. It's just asking for him to just affirm that he will not allow ICE on our campuses and allow ICE to detain students. There's 3 international students whose visas were revoked, and we don't want to let that number get any higher. So please scan this QR code, sign this petition. You can find it on change.org. It's everywhere. So please look out for the flyers and please sign this petition. Thank you.
I'll just say really briefly before I introduce the work of Professor Concepcion, Newhouse is literally wrapped in the First Amendment. The right to free speech, free expression, and ultimately free academic inquiry is enshrined in the Constitution for all persons, including undocumented immigrants, according to Plyer v. Doe, 1982. What has become clear over the past few weeks is the government can deport you by accident and then refuse to bring you back, regardless of your status. Having said that, I would like to have RC Concepcion talk about the app that he has created for you, all of your loved ones, that can be used when engaging in these interactions.
So I stand here as a son of a Mexican mother and a Puerto Rican father. I was born in the Bronx in the 70s as a part of the redlining. We barely got a chance to be able to do anything. I went to school in a shopping cart, and now I sit as an assistant teaching professor at Newhouse. That is the goal, that is the dream, that's the desire for so many people that are now under attack. So I wrote an op-ed article for Syracuse.com talking about, is this who we want to be? This is Central New York. Harriet Tubman's 20 minutes away from here. The suffrage movement, the women's rights was in Seneca Falls, an hour away from here, and yet there's a Mexican restaurant, there's a Mexican supermarket in Geneva, New York, that put out a sign that said, if you are afraid to come out, we are happy to be able to take food to you. Now, I was a little upset about that, and I was like, you know what? Is this what we want to be? You put it on Facebook, they told you exactly what they want. Round them up, go get them all, round them up. So I was like, hell no, like we can't do that. So I sat down, a cup of coffee inside of my truck, and in 9 days, I created an app called vigia.co. Basically, think of it as Waze for ICE agents. For starters, so you can go to vigia.co, and not only does it have this community pin map to be able to find them, it also has AI chatbots that are designed with Southern Poverty Law Center, with the ACLU, with LULAC. It has real-time translation so that individuals that are immigrants don't have to rely on whether or not they know English to be able to know their rights. If you're handing someone a red card, you are already too close to ICE. You need distance, and you need time, and you need the resources. So I sat there in 9 days doing something that probably 20 other programs could have done. Not bad for a DEI person. But then all of a sudden we started seeing all of the stuff happening with universities. And as a professor and as a person who knows that I have the privilege to represent those people who look like me, I also have an equal responsibility to defend those people. So to that end, we set up another website. This one's gonna be a lot easier for you to remember. It's called deicer.org. That's it, every university can use a good deicer. So in that section, I wanted to be able to expand on the work that I did. So obviously it does the Ways for ICE. Obviously it does all of the right stuff. Obviously it gives you all of the resources that you want. But then I know that it is not just me. It is people that look like me. So that same app now is available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, and Arabic. I thought it important to be able to tell all of you because I don't want you to just sit here and clap and organize while we are grateful for it. I do want you to understand that as professors, and specifically professors that look like me, we're also not standing by. We're also trying to be able to get into this fight, and we want all of you to get into the fight. Thank you so much.